Okay, I am now starting. I have now started the recording. Okay, central to the topic on international finance is the foreign exchange rate. What is the foreign exchange rate? It is the price of one country's currency in units of another country's currency. The price of one country's currency in units of another country's currency. What I'm going to introduce to you, the topic that I'm going to introduce to you for tonight is the concept of purchasing power parity, PPP. Purchasing power parity, that's PPP. It is a relationship in which the same products cost roughly the same amount in different countries after taking into account the exchange rate. Okay? Nakuha niyo yan? Sana nakuha niyo, ha? The relationship in which the same products cost roughly the same amount in different countries after taking into account the exchange rate. Purchasing power parity. Say for example, the exchange rate for $1 is 50 pesos. $1 is 50 pesos. Now, if there is a t-shirt in the Philippines which costs 100 pesos, how much would it cost in the United States? Anyone? If there is a t-shirt in the Philippines which would cost 100 pesos, how much would it cost in the United States? Okay, very good. Miss Tan, Miss De La Cruz, and Mr. Shi. The correct answer is $2. Why? Because the exchange rate is 50 pesos. 100 pesos would mean 50 times 2. Tama? 50 times 2. $1 times 2 is also $2. Okay. So purchasing power parity tells us that if something is priced an amount in one country, when you convert your currency to that country's currency, you are going to spend approximately the same amount, which would be an equivalent of 100 pesos given this exchange rate to dollars. We simply call this the law of one price. The law of one price. So purchasing power parity, it is the relationship in which the same products cost roughly the same amount in different countries after taking into account the exchange rate. Okay? Now, how are we going to arrive at the price of an item at home? The price at home is equal to the foreign price times the spot rate. Do you know what the spot rate is? The spot rate is the exchange rate on the spot. In other words, if the exchange will happen now, you are going to exchange it at this rate. Spot rate on the spot, it is the price now. The exchange rate now. We call that the spot rate. The price of an item at home is equal to the price in a foreign country multiplied by the spot rate. So in Philippine peso terms, our home, our Philippines, in Philippine peso terms, a $2 item, if the exchange rate is 50 pesos is to $1, would cost 100 pesos. Again, we call this the purchasing power parity. Please take note of this formula. The price of an item at home is simply equal to the price of that item in a foreign country multiplied by the exchange rate on the spot. The spot rate is the exchange rate if it will be exchanged now, today. Okay, now tell me, do you think the purchasing power parity, as it is defined currently, do you think that purchasing power parity is something that is true in the real world? Anyone? Do you think the purchasing power parity is accurate? Yes or no? Anyone? Do you think the purchasing power parity is accurate in the real world? When you are going to buy one item in one country, you are going to spend the same amount if you go to another country, assuming you're going to use the spot rate to exchange the currency. Is this proposition accurate? Yes or no? No, no. Mr. Shi, Miss Iguana, Mr. Shi and Miss Iguana. Okay, no daw. Okay. Can anyone tell me why the answer is no? Tama yan. The answer is no. But why is the answer no? The cost of the t-shirt varies in each country. It could be more expensive or sometimes cheaper. Can anyone tell me the reason why when you will convert from one currency to another, the price will no longer be the same? Why will the t-shirt become more costly, or why is it going to become cheaper? Okay? Sige. Thank you, Mr. Shi. Anyone can expound on that? Okay. While waiting for your response, I'm now going to discuss something. You can find here the global prices for Big Mac in July 2020 by country. This is again the global prices for a Big Mac, the largest McDonald's burger. You know this, the Big Mac in July 2020 by country. If you go to the United States, the Big Mac costs approximately $5.71. Okay? If you will buy the Big Mac in the United States, it would be $5.71. If you go to Sweden, to Lebanon, and Switzerland, it will be priced higher. In Switzerland, for example, the price of the Big Mac is more than $1 above that in the United States, $6.91. Now, if you go to the cheapest Big Mac, the country with the cheapest Big Mac is in South Africa, as far as this table is concerned. The cost of the Big Mac is around $1.86 only, which is in South Africa. Philippines, the average cost of the Big Mac is 2.87. Pag i-multiply nyo to sa 50, 2.87 and 50. This is around 140, no? Tama naman, no? Yung Big Mac nasa 140 pesos sa atin. Okay? Now, this started as a joke, but the journal The Economist, you know The Economist, have been monitoring the Big Mac prices across the globe in different periods of time, regularly in order to monitor the purchasing power parity concept. So, anong bagay ba yung madaling mahanap kahit saan sa buong mundo? Wherever you are in this world, more often than not, whatever country you live in, there will always be a McDonald's. Okay? Well, not all countries, but shall I say 80% of the countries, around maybe 80% of the countries, they have McDonald's. And therefore, the Big Mac Index has been used as an indicator of purchasing power parity. As you can see, the law of one price doesn't work in the real world. Go to the United States, the cost of the Big Mac is $5.71. Go to Switzerland, the cost of the Big Mac is $6.91. Tama? US, $5.71. Switzerland, it costs $6.91. Go to the Philippines, the Big Mac is $2.87. That's around 140 pesos. And in South Africa, 186. Convert it to pesos, it's less than 100 pesos. Napakamura ng Big Mac. Now, there are a lot of variables to consider here, especially that Big Mac is not really the same across the world. Go to the Middle East, the Big Mac has no pork. It has lamb, maybe. It has mutton. Go to India, the Big Mac has no beef because holy cow, literally holy cow. Go to the Philippines and Southeast Asia, compare the Big Mac to that in the United States. The Big Mac in Southeast Asia is generally smaller than that in the United States. Iba yung Big Mac natin dito in size compared dun sa totoong Big Mac sa United States. Now, there are a lot of things to consider that would affect the comparability of these prices. However, even if you adjust for those differences, you would find out that the law of one price doesn't really work in the real world. What are the real world issues on PPP? The real world issues on the purchasing power parity. Number one, anyone? Real world issues on the purchasing power parity. Any idea? Okay, let me start, ha? One issue on the purchasing power parity is transportation and tariff. Needless to say, when you are going to buy water in the middle of the desert, say for example, in the middle of Saudi Arabia, if you will buy water in the middle of Saudi Arabia, it is expected to be more expensive. It's expected to be pricier compared to a water bottle in Manila. Why? Because the needed infrastructure, transportation, would make it more difficult to bring bottled water in the middle of the desert. And of course, there are tariffs. So some products, they may cost the same, other things equal, but some countries may put a tariff, meaning to say an additional tax on the imported item. So if you would notice, electronics, gadgets like the iPhone, as well as cars, automobiles, they are cheaper in the United States compared to the Philippines because of the absence of tariff. Okay? In the United States. In the Philippines, pag pumasok ang iPhone, pag pumasok yung kotse, pinapatungan ng taripa. Kaya mas mahal yung kotse dito. Services and non-shippable products. Okay? Paano kung kailangan mong magpagupit? What if you need a haircut? Okay. When you need a haircut, that is a service. Okay? It's non-shippable. Meaning to say, if you need a haircut in Singapore, you have to pay for the price of a haircut in Singapore. You cannot simply import haircuts from the Philippines, which is cheaper. Okay? So services cannot be imported or exported across borders. That is the reason why if the service is expensive, the buyers of the service will have no choice but to use it because they are confined to that geographic area. That's why a haircut in the Philippines is cheaper than the haircut in Singapore. Access to information technology. Some societies have no idea what the market price is because they have no access to information. Fluctuations in the exchange rate. These are also real world issues on the PPP. Make it more difficult to maintain a stable price. Now, we have to differentiate nominal versus real exchange rates. There is a distinction between nominal and real exchange rates. A nominal exchange rate is the exchange rate expressed currency to currency. So currency to currency, we call this the nominal exchange rate. $1, for example, is around 50 Philippine pesos. Now, if you put it the other way around, 1 Philippine peso is around 2 cents, 0.02 US dollars. This way of expressing the exchange rate is called the nominal exchange rate. Now, if you are going to express it in real terms, it should be relative to a particular product or basket of products. Real exchange rates are expressed this way. Say, for example, if $1 is equal to 50 pesos, there's a 240 peso jacket in the Philippines, which costs $5 in the USA. Note that these do not tie up. Tama ba? Try nyo. 50 times $5, that's 250. The real exchange rates expressed this way. A jacket in the Philippines is how many times more costly than the jacket in the USA? You can calculate it this way. Multiply 50 peso per $1 by $5, it's a US jacket. Divide it by the 240 peso per Philippine jacket. I repeat, multiply 50 pesos by the $5, which is the cost of the US jacket, and then divide it by the price of that same jacket in the Philippines this time, which is 240. 50 times $5 is 250 pesos. 240 pesos divide 1.04 Philippine jacket is equal to 1 USA jacket. So this is how the real exchange rates are expressed. Let me repeat. Nominal exchange rate. A nominal exchange rate is the exchange rate as you know it. You just express one currency in terms of the other. $1, 50 Philippine pesos. 1 Philippine peso, that's 0.02 US dollar. Real exchange rates, on the other hand, would involve a product or a basket of products. If, say, for example, the cost of a jacket is 240 pesos in the Philippines, and that same jacket in the US would cost $5, 50 times $5 per US jacket, that's 250 pesos, divided by 240 pesos of each Philippine jacket, there would be 1.04 Philippine jackets for every 1 USA jacket. Okay ba? Or, if you would like to express how many US jackets per Philippine jacket, multiply the exchange rate in terms of 1 peso. $0.02 times 240 pesos per Philippine jacket. It costs $5 in the US. 0.02 times 240, that's $4.8. Divided by $5 in the US, 1 Philippine jacket is equivalent to 0.96 USA jacket. Okay? That's the real exchange rates. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Now, so far in our discussion, what I have discussed is the purchasing power parity in absolute terms. Purchasing power parity in absolute terms. Now, in purchasing power parity in absolute terms, there should be one price across different parts of the globe. Convert one currency to another, the price would be the same. In theory, this should be true. In theory, this should be true. However, in practice, this is not necessarily true. Okay? I'm going to talk about the reasoning why this should be true later on. However, it is important to take note that there are two versions of PPP. What is being described here is the absolute PPP. Absolute PPP. What is described here is absolute PPP. The other version of PPP is called relative PPP. Again, this is absolute purchasing power parity. The other version is called the relative purchasing power parity. I'm going to let you watch a video on the difference on that before we are going to continue with our discussion. So please watch the next video and then we will continue after you watch it. Okay, so let us resume our discussion. Okay, so I hope you're able to watch the video assigned to you, which is about absolute PPP and relative PPP. So what's the difference? Absolute PPP is very much similar to the concept of law of one price. Purchasing power parity in an absolute sense means law of one price, absolute PPP. Now, the logic of the absolute PPP is this. If, for example, the Big Mac is 691 in Switzerland, in New Zealand it's 435. Let's compare the Big Mac of Switzerland and New Zealand. If absolute if the price of Big Mac in Switzerland is 691 and the price of Big Mac in New Zealand is 435, this is what will happen. There would be what we call arbitragers, people who will be engaged in arbitrage. People who will be engaged in arbitrage would do this. They will buy in New Zealand at 435 and sell in Switzerland at 691. They will buy in New Zealand at 435 and they will sell in Switzerland at 691. Nakuha nyo ba yon? So, if the prices are different when you convert from one currency to another, if absolute PPP is not true, there will be people who will be engaged in arbitrage. Bibili sila sa New Zealand, ibebenta nila sa Switzerland. Nakuha niyo yung logic? I repeat, the absolute PPP is said to be true because if there will be a case that it's not true, people will engage in arbitrage. Those who are in New Zealand will buy it at a lower price and sell it at Switzerland at a higher price. What would happen if they will do this? It will increase the demand for Big Mac in New Zealand. Ay, ang daming bumibili sa New Zealand. It will therefore increase the price of the Big Mac here from 435 to 5 something. In Switzerland, on the other hand, because many people are now selling Big Macs in Switzerland, those people who are buying from New Zealand, they're selling it in Switzerland, the supply will increase. If the supply will increase, the price will go down. Nakuha niyo ba yon? Now, if prices are different, okay, if the absolute PPP is not true, people will engage in arbitrage. They will buy where it is at a lower price and sell where it is at a higher price. Bibili sila kung saan yung mura, ibebenta nila kung saan yung mahal. If they will do this, the price of the Big Mac in New Zealand will increase because many people will order here. Dito na lang sila mag-order. Nakuha nyo? It will increase from 435 to, say for example, 5.5. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, because many people are now selling here, those who are engaging in arbitrage, the supply will increase. If the supply will increase, the price will go down. Ay, marami nang nabebenta dito. The price will go down. At the end of the day, the conclusion will be absolute PPP. At the end of the day, in theory, if we're going to be simplistic about it, at the end of the day, the result will be absolute PPP. There will only be one price. Nakuha nyo? If there will be different prices, people will engage in arbitrage. After arbitrage will happen, they will buy where it is cheap and sell where it is expensive. There will now be only one price. Bibilhin nila dito, ibebenta nila to. Tataas ang demand dito, tataas ang presyo. Tataas ang supply dito, dahil dito nila binebenta, bababa ang presyo nito. Higher supply, lower price. Okay? Absolute PPP is the result of arbitrage. Okay? However, I have discussed to you a while ago, in the real world, it is more complicated. In the real world, absolute PPP cannot happen because of these reasons discussed. Transportation and tariff, services, non-shippable products, access to IT, and fluctuations in the exchange rate. In the real world, what can be observed is relative PPP. Although the prices may be different from country to country, but there would be a relationship among these prices. For example, if there will be a price increase in one country, more or less, it would affect the prices in other countries as well. There would be a corresponding change in the other countries as well. Should there be a price increase in one country, there would be a corresponding change in another country. This is the result of relative PPP, which I'm going to discuss fully later. In the meantime, I would like to test your knowledge by giving you these questions. Let me start with the basic. Question number one. If purchasing power parity were to hold even in the short run, then A, real exchange rates should tend to decrease over time. B, quoted nominal exchange rates should be stable over time. C, real exchange rates should tend to increase over time. D, real exchange rates should be stable over time. So, before you post your answers, let's do it together. Type muna, ha? Type muna. Okay, let's press the enter sign together. Enter. Again, let's press the enter sign together. Enter. Okay, this is my question. If purchasing power parity were to hold even in the short run, then the answer would be letter dog. Very good. Real exchange rates should be stable over time. Okay? Hindi pa bago-bago. If it were to hold true even in the short run, the real exchange rates should be stable over time. Very good. Very good. I'm impressed. Nakuha niya yung logic ng purchasing power parity. Next question. The purchasing power parity exchange rate blank. A is a fixed or peg exchange rate. B results in an undervalued currency of countries that are net importers. C holds constant the relative price levels in two countries when measured in a common currency. D is always equal to the market exchange rate. Enter. Enter. Okay, very good. So the very concept of purchasing parity exchange rate, it holds constant the relative price levels in two countries when measured in a common currency. The correct answer is letter C. Okay, again, I'm impressed. Next. Ito na ha. So, a while ago, I was talking about relative PPP, relative purchasing, sorry, relative PPP, relative purchasing power parity. Consider a world consisting of only two countries, Canada and the United Kingdom. Inflation in Canada in 1 year was 5%, and in the United Kingdom, it was 10%. At what rate is the Canadian dollar expected to change? How about the UK pound sterling? Okay? Now, medyo mahirap to, no? Let me demonstrate first. At what rate is the Canadian dollar expected to change? How about the UK pound sterling? There are only two countries, Canada and UK, in this world. Inflation in Canada was 5%. In other words, the price levels went up by 5%. Nagmahal ang mga produkto ng 5% sa Canada. In UK, it went up by 10%. Nagmahal ang presyo ng mga bilihin ng 10% sa UK. At what rate is the Canadian dollar expected to change? Now, to simplify the analysis, I'm going to assume the following. 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 1 UK pound. 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 1 UK pound. We will start with this exchange rate. Example lang to ha. Example lang. Now, in a span of 1 year, what used to be acquirable at a price of 1 Canadian dollar will now require 1 times 1.05 because the price levels went up by 5%, will now require 1.05 Canadian dollars. In the UK, since price levels went up by 10%, that would be 1 times 1.10, 1.10 UK pounds. Ulitin ko. In the beginning of the year, let's say that the exchange rate, just an example, $1, 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 1 UK pound. But because inflation happened, 1 Canadian dollar is now what used to be acquirable at 1 Canadian dollar will now require 1.05 Canadian dollars. And what used to be acquirable by 1 UK pound, you can acquire it, you can buy it at a higher price now, 1.10 UK pound. So this is the question. At what rate is the Canadian dollar expected to change? Compared to the UK pound sterling, the Canadian dollar is equal to 1.05 na ngayon, no? Yung anong nabibilihin nyo ng $1 dati, 1.05 na kailangan. So, anong nabibili nyo ng 1 UK pound dati, 1.10 na ngayon. So, the Canadian dollar, divide this by both 1.05. Okay? The Canadian dollar is now 1.0476 UK pounds. Tumaas ba ang Canadian dollar? Oo. The Canadian dollar appreciated by 4.76% because the inflation is lower in Canada than in the United Kingdom. So at what rate is the Canadian dollar expected to change? The answer is it is expected to appreciate by 4.76%. Follow-up question. How about the United Kingdom pound sterling? Now, given this analysis, suppose we start that they are equal in the beginning of the year. What used to be acquirable at 1 UK pound, you can acquire it this time at a higher price, 1.10 UK pounds. As for the Canadian dollar, the price levels only went up by 5% to 1.05. Divide both sides of the equation by 1.10 UK pounds. You would have the following. The 1 UK pound this time is now equal to 0.9545 Canadian dollars only. In other words, at the beginning of the year, it's 1:1. The UK pound now went down in value to only 0.9545 Canadian dollars. So the UK pound depreciated by 1 minus 0.9545, 0.0455. The UK pound went down by 4.55%. Okay? So, kung naintindihan nyo, please answer this question. I now change. I now change the inflation rates in the two countries. I will give you 3 minutes to answer this question. Go. Okay. So tell me at what rate kapag appreciate positive, kapag depreciate negative. In one line, tell me. In one line lang ha. Isang answer lang. Isang type lang, no? Two answers. Number one, the change in the Canadian dollar. And then number two, the change in the UK pound sterling. Please type your answers. In my signal, press the enter sign. Enter. Enter. Enter now. Okay, everyone now? Lahat ba may sagot? Okay, bakit tatlo lang may sagot ngayon? Sige, habol yung iba, ha? So, to simplify again our analysis, we will start with 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 1 UK pound. So, inflation in Canada, 4%. Inflation in UK, 8%. 1 times 1.04, what can be bought at 1 Canadian dollar a year ago can now be bought at a higher price, 1.04. In the UK, what can be bought by 1 UK pound can now be bought at a higher price, 1.08. Okay? To demonstrate what happened to the Canadian dollar in terms of the UK pound, divide both sides by 1.04. So the Canadian dollar happened to increase in value relative to the UK pound. From 1 Canadian dollar just equal to 1 UK pound, 1:1, we started here. The one Canadian dollar is now worth a higher amount of UK pound, 1.0385. Very good. The Canadian dollar appreciated by 3.85%. On the other hand, the UK pound sterling, what used to be 1 UK pound is now 1.08. Divide by 1.08 both sides. The UK pound sterling is now valued at less Canadian dollar, 0.9630 from $1. This is a decrease by 3.70%. Okay? So very good, Mr. Shi, Miss Diaz, Miss Molina. I hope everybody were able to uh, follow. Okay? So I think I'm going to end the discussion here. More of this next meeting, Wednesday. And then yung assignment nyo, it will be it will be due next week, Monday. Okay? Next week, Monday pa yung due ng assignment. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the night.